Right, welcome back to Migmatis Golf, everyone, and more importantly, a new poor man's training aid video. Now, one of my subscribers, about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, asked me, they told me they were surprised I hadn't made a poor man's version of the blue brick. You've probably all seen the blue brick. It's like a blue brick which has a bunch of holes in it that you can put shafts in at different angles to practice different things. And it gets great reviews. Sadly, when it's on sale, it's 129 bucks, normally 169. Like all training aids, a bit overpriced. And so I started on Tinterweb doing my research, and like all these training aids, I quickly have to decide whether it's worth trying to make a poor man's version or whether there are just cheaper options out there. And in this case, I is going to do both, because yes, there are cheaper options out there, which I'm going to show you. And two, at a later stage, I'm going to make my own version. I'm still tinkering to figure out the best way or the easiest way to do it with the lowest skill set. So without further ado, let me put this club down. In my research, all the usual websites, eBay, Alibaba, Temu, Etsy. In this case, I came across Sussy. Now, like I told you, the blue brick, 129 bucks. Very mucho dinero. This guy here, which, let's face it, it's just a knockoff. They've just ripped off the blue brick. I don't know who came up with the idea first. I suspect the guys and the girls at Blue Brick came up with the idea first, and then they were just ripped off by these Chinese companies. I think they're Chinese. I can't be 100% sure. And so, various people have various opinions about, whether that's ethical or not. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just showing you the options. So here it is. This guy here on Etsy, and I'm sure I saw some on Alibaba, $38 with a bit of shipping, under 50 bucks. And it looks to me, I'll give you a close-up in a minute. So it comes with this version of the blue brick. I got mine in white. I think this comes in 7 different colors. Who cares about the color? And it comes with some of these collapsible sticks to go in it. So you get everything you need. It seems almost identical. There might be some slight variation in the holes, and it looks like it's just 3D printed, and then they've shoved a bunch of mortar or what do you call that? What do they call you the stuff that you set tile with? Anyway, some kind of like mortar-based compound in the back of it to give it some hefty weight so the shafts don't pull it over. So I will proceed to give you the close-up, but this is just 38 bucks, right? Plus a bit of shipping. I'll set it up really quickly before I show you the close-ups, and you can see how good it is. So the brick just goes on the ground. The shafts, I think they give you 2. Oh look, they even give you a little explanation about how to set one of these up. If you don't know how to do that, you probably shouldn't be golfing. There we go, I'll throw one down. So, it has those little elastics in, so it's nice, it's collapsible. Transport it to the range, and there you go, all your different holes. I'll stick it in the 6-iron hole right there. Is that about a 6-iron? It tells you actually on it. It says 6-iron. What is that? The printing, is that 69 degrees? Now, straight off the bat, I can tell you that the real McCoy, the blue brick, is going to be, there's going to be no ambiguity about what's written on there. It's going to be very legible. This is because it's 3D printed. You'll see later. There's some, I think that is, it's either 69 or 60 degrees. I'd have to check that. Probably 60 degrees. But anyway, let's have a look. Yeah, I would say that's pretty close to 6 iron. So we have a few different options on there, and I'll do a photo side by side somewhere in this video of this and the blue brick. So there it is, much cheaper version. So even though I'm going to make a poor man's one myself, try and make it even cheaper, if you don't have the skill set and you don't have all the tools as usual, this is available to you. So let's get on to the close-ups. Right, here it is in all its glory. So you can see we have at the top here sand wedge, 6 iron, driver 6 iron, sand wedge, 72 degrees, 60 degrees, 48 degrees. It's got left hand, right hand, 25 degree inside right hand, 25 degree inside left hand, wedge impact 25 left hand, right hand. These aren't labeled. Couple of holes at the bottom and on the sides. So without direct comparison to the blue brick, because I don't have the blue brick, it seems to have a lot of the features that the blue brick has. I'll turn it over. As you can see, it's 3D printed, and it has this thin set. That's the word I was looking for. It has this thin set, or this mortar in the back here. So pretty agricultural, I would say. Obviously doesn't have the finish of the blue brick, but does the job for much cheaper. I think I'm going to throw, it's pretty heavy, I think I'm going to throw some more of that in these other holes, simply to have it nicely heavy and weighed down. So that's it. I'll show you close up of the shafts that come with it. You could, you know, these you could pick up anywhere. You could use those ones from Lowe's or Home Depot. I don't think these are important. This is the main attraction here. But there you go. So that is the Zwing with a Z or a Z. Zwing trainer. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that is from China. But there you go. Like I said, comes in many different colors. Go check it out and we will move on. So there you go. That was the cheapo knockoff blue brick. And stay tuned, because next part of the video is me actually making one even cheaper than this. We'll see if I can do it even cheaper than this, so you can do that at home if you don't want to even spend the $50 or whatever it would cost you to get this puppy here. All right, here we go. All right, this will all be explained a bit later, but for now I just have a 2x4 and I am drilling straight holes. So middle of the 2x4 that way down, I'm just drilling straight holes the same diameter as the shaft I'm going to use, and that's going to be the same diameter hole that goes in the actual poor man's blue brick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is all of I'm going to need. You can drill more. I'll explain a bit later. We're going to cut the angles that we require on the miter saw to form the drill blocks that helps us drill these holes. So step 1, you can do this on a drill press. If you don't have a drill press, you can buy one of those little drilling blocks that you just sit on here and it gets the bit to start straight, or you can try and freehand it if you have a square or something. I'm sure you could get it pretty straight freehanding it as well. Right, moving on. Right, now pay attention, because this is where it gets tricky. So on my block I have these holes separated by 2 inches, right? And then I've marked the 2 inches gaps between them, and I've marked here all the angles I need: 48, 60, 72, 25, 65, because that, I believe, is on the blue block, even though it's not shown, but it's not on my guy that I got on Etsy, and we'll come back to that because I've discovered some potential flaws with it. So what I've done now then is, from the edge of each piece, I've drawn my angles, and so 48 degrees, 60 degrees, 72 degrees. This here is 25, but you see, if I was to cut that angle, it would leave me with a tiny block. So I've just come down a bit and cut the angle here, so that I have more of a hole, of a guide hole. So be careful with the shallow angles, you need to give yourself a bit more. And then this is the 65 degrees. So all of these will get cut, and it will leave me with a little triangular block. Let's take this 48 degrees. And if you imagine that I place this on the flat, and then my drill bit goes through here as a guide, and it will drill into whatever I'm putting it on at 48 degrees. So once these are all cut out, I'll show you in detail how it works, but it would all come together, trust me. But look, cheap piece of 2x4 there. You can probably find that in any skip or anything, and all you need is a drill press or a drill, and the drill bit of the size of the shaft you're going to use. I'm going to use this shaft, and I might as well show you now. These are these reflector things from Home Depot. This at my Home Depot, which is probably one of the most expensive ones in the country, is $3.57. We're going to cut that end off. But this is light, it's plastic, and it's 1/4 inch diameter pretty much. The reason I'm not using one of those other like orange or yellow types of markers you get at the big box stores is because they are heavier. They're a bit thicker, which is fine, but they're a bit heavier, and I want to go with whatever is the lightest, so that my block, which is going to be made out of that piece of wood, that we'll come back to that, so that my block doesn't tip over. Right, moving on. Here we are then at the Migmatis saw. Now I know what you're saying, I don't have a Migmatis saw. Well, if you don't have a Migmatis saw, you can do this with a hand saw, because you could probably get these pretty accurate with a hand saw, if I'm perfectly honest, but we're going to make quick work of this. So there are all my angles. When it comes to cutting steeper angles, you might have to turn the saw this way. So we will see where we get, but maybe for these guys here, the saw might have to be turned, the piece of wood might have to be turned that way, because we can only get just over 45 on both sides on a typical miter saw. Do not cut your fingers off, people. Use the clamps and everything you need. Right, I'm going to chop these up and then we'll come back to it. Okay, my little beauties, here we are. So, all cut: 60, 48, 72, 25, and the 65-25, which, as you can see, is a compound cut. Now, I only made one of these, and I got the feeling this might only work for one side, but I'll have to double check that. Anyway, health warning, word of caution. You're going to do a lot of trial and error. Why? Because the method I just told you, when you set out to drill from the top like this and then cut the angles, a lot of the angles, you got to remember that you want the angles are from, if this was the floor, the angles are from the floor, that lie angle, kind of like that. So when you pre-drill that, you're not necessarily cutting across the 2x4 all the time. You might be in a situation where you're cutting the angle like this, and I made a few mistakes, as you can see. But once you've cut it, do us a favor, put it down on the bench like that, grab your shaft and stick it in there, and just make sure, measure with your device to make sure it is the correct angle you want. So be very, very careful whilst doing this. If you have one of those adjustable drill presses, that's probably like a safer way to go. Or potentially cut these blocks at the correct angles. So as you can see, you're going to cut the block so that you have the correct angle here, and then you can use one of those handheld kind of straight drilling devices to drill these. Either way, if you're going to use this, just be very, very careful. I don't want to be responsible for any of you chopping your hands off. So now that we have these made, we're going to carry on with the device. Now, as I said before, I was going to tell you a little flaw about this thing here. If you compare this to the blue block, and I will show you picture side by side here, or maybe a picture in picture of the blue block, you'll see the blue block has like a 65-25 angle for the wedges. Here they have 25-25. I don't know what you would use that for. I have absolutely no idea. So we're going to go with the 65-25 that I nicely made there with the compound miter saw. So that's what we're going to do. We have the 25 degrees there. That's nice. Now this guy, when I noticed this 25-25, I go, I haven't seen that before on the blue block. It was a 65-25. So I did a bit more research. As I told you, this was the cheapest guy on Etsy, $38. If you bump it up to $49, $50, there is another model. You'll see there's a bunch of them. And that other model is more similar to the blue block with the 65-25 angles, all of these as well. But it looks like it's slightly better made. This is, you'd expect for $38, 3D printed, quite cheaply made. It does what it says on the tin though, and I only bought it because I wanted to see how I could replicate it. So now we have our block, which is quite heavy. How are we going to replicate it? Well, this is my master plan. I have some hardwood timber here left over from the project. Now, could you do it out of like Douglas fir or something? Probably not, because this stick is probably too heavy. It's going to tip it over. Now, if this shaft was maybe used of like balsa wood or some light wood, you could probably do it. But then if you hit it, you'd probably snap it. So you want a plastic stick so you don't snap it. But you want something dense enough like this, and we might even have to weigh this down, which is why for $10 at the store we have some iron bar, nice and weighty, and this might get added to the perimeter, the back side of the block, so the opposite side to which way these shafts are leaning, in order to support it. But we'll see, we might not need that. So this build might even be $10 cheaper. We shall see. So I'm going to build my block out of this piece of hardwood. I believe this is, what is this? This is either, it's either a Ipe or a, I'll think of it. I know what this is. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But you can make it out of any kind of hardwood. As you see, it's about just over 1.5 inches thick. So if you manage to find yourself a scrap piece of that, which I'm sure you could, if you went to any timber merchants or find any kind of woodworker, they typically don't keep this kind of stuff. They'll throw that off-cut away. You could get that. And so here we go. So I'm going to make my block same size as this one. So I'm going to cut it out of that. Then we will be laying out our holes. We'll be hot gluing these into position and using the drill to start the pilot hole at the correct angle. And if we have to go a bit deeper, because some of these are quite long, if we have to go a bit deeper, we'll pop it off and carry on the hole like that. So I'm going to cut this to size, and I'll get back to you when I'm going to be installing the blocks to drill the holes. Right, there is the block cut. I remember what it is. It's sapele. So sapele is very dense, does well outside as well, but that doesn't really matter. Whatever you use, you can clear coat that or paint it or whatever, make it look pretty. And as you can see, it's a bit thicker than my other block, but does that really matter for the sake of 3/16 to 1/4 inch? I don't think so. So we're going to get on with the layout, and I'll show you afterwards. Right, best way to do this I've found when it comes time to drilling these holes at angles is choose your block, thread your drill bit through it, go in and out a few times just to slightly enlarge the holes so it's not too stiff. To get your alignment rods in. Just remember this is wood, right? So if it stays outside, it's going to expand, contract, all that. So give yourself a bit of fat in the system. So best thing is if you can see, I've made some kind of nail holes here, just so the tip of your wood drilling bit bites a bit, but thread it through and then kind of position it. So let me get it on. Position it like that so that the tip of the bit is grabbing in that hole, and then slide, put a bit of hot glue in there, slide that block down, and just make sure it's nicely parallel to the sides in both directions. So nicely square, if you use your square to square it up, and then you will be able to get that hole drilled beautifully. So let me just glue the first one in place and I'll show it to you. So my first block is glued in using a said technique. As you can see, put a little square on it there. It's nicely square there. So now I can drill that hole and stand by for the result. And there it is, first hole drilled. So as you can see, I cut the reflector bit off that shaft. That shaft is 4 feet, and it's just, if I can see how it just wants to pull on this block. So I think I will add a little bit of that iron bar just to weigh down the back side here. I think so. I think anything in this direction will be fine because the wood's longer. But yeah, let's carry on drilling the holes. The hot glue thing's working a treat. It's quite tough to drill these holes. Sapele is quite dense. And then I'll show you after all the holes are drilled. Okay, mostly drilled out, bar one, which is the tricky compound 65-25. As you can see, I am human. I made one little mistake there. This guy slipped by about 1/8 of an inch, but not going to worry. And then I didn't really pay attention on a couple of them to the depth of the drill bit, and I came through here on the back side. But we'll just fill those, Bondo or something, no big deal. Anyway, pay attention to that. So, on the blue block, I'm pretty sure that I think they call it the wedge impact position. Let me get something that represents the shaft. I'm pretty sure that it tilts towards the golfer and off to the left comes ceci. So that's what I believe it does. And that's why I've cut this guy. As you can see, if I square this edge up to this edge, then that hole will be coming at that angle and towards me at a 65-25. So let's drill that, guys. The last one to go. Then we'll pretty this thing up. And there it be, folks. Beautifully done. So this technique works really well. Just take your time, double check your angles. Right, so that's that. Now, as I said, I think on the back side here, I'm going to add a little bit of that iron bar just to weight this thing down. And then obviously tidy the whole thing up. Maybe a lick of paint and we'll be done. Okie dokie, barring the paint job and the beautifying, nous sommes finis. We are finished. So I have added, on the back side, I've added my 2 pieces of steel bar here just for a bit of extra weight to stop it tipping over. Now I've recessed these simply because I have a table saw and I'm able to do it and blah blah blah. But you could just double up a couple of thickness of these, or whatever you have to add weight here. You could even throw a whole bunch of bolts and screws in the backside here, on the underside, backside. You could throw a whole bunch of stuff in there. Just be careful that it's still flush, so this thing sits flat on the ground and doesn't change the angles. But you can get creative and just add some weight. You could even drill a series of holes in this, a bit like they did with this guy. This is 3D printed. See, I kind of filled it up with more thin set, or that's actually mortar, I think. But you could drill a whole bunch of holes in here and fill it up with thin set, whatever you have, just to make it a bit heavier, so that when it's there, and our most extreme case would be this guy here, wouldn't it? Be the 48. No, that's the 72, sorry, the first ones we drilled. So the 48 there is just heavy enough that it's not going anywhere. And perfecto. Everything else, let's try the 25 degrees if we haven't done that. Look at that, that's beautiful, works really well. So, there you go. Now, if you had to buy all of this, I'm sure that if you used a cheap piece of wood, maybe some Douglas fir or something like that, then by adding a whole bunch of scrap screws, bolts, whatever, to the underside, you could make it heavy enough that it didn't move. You can find, if you look long enough, you can find scrap pieces of wood laying around everywhere. Or you have a buddy or whatever that can donate something to you, even build this for you if you don't have the tools. But with very little or very basic tools, you can build this thing. And I bought this for $3.57. The bar there was $10. So I'm in it for like, $15 maybe, a couple of hours labor. If you had to buy the wood, you might be in it for $20. Come on, man. You can't really beat that. So I'm going to give this a bit of a prime, I think. Yeah, stop everything rusting. I'm going to give that a little bit of a prime and a paint job. And then I'll show you the final product, probably in situ being used. Right, well, there you go. Finished article, everybody. Here it is with a lick of paint and a bit of Sharpie on it to replicate the angles and which iron or driver or whatever, which club you're using. Pretty stable, as you can see, with those added metal weights. Yeah, so for $15-20, there you go. You got your poor man's blue block. I'm just going to set the blue brick, sorry, not blue block. I'll call mine the white block. There you go. I'll set the camera up and show you in action, as they say. Here we go. Well, there you go. Sorry, I've got it set up in a weird position so you can get me and the device in the camera. There it is. It's set up on 6-iron. You can move it around. You can see if I put it on sand wedge, 72 degrees, then much more upright. So because I have 6-iron in my hand, we'll go back to 6-iron setup, nice and stable. If you whack it, the stick will probably come out. You're not going to damage anything. So as you can see, this is a drill that you'd probably do. Make sure you don't take it too far inside and then drop it on the inside. Perfect. So 15, 20 bucks. You get yourself a poor man's blue brick. Hope you liked the video as usual. Go build yourself one. Leave some comments. Tell me how you can improve this or tell me where I've gone wrong. And please subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you again soon with another poor man's training aid video. Take care, everybody.